This is a Sinai Fleet Systems experimental B-Wing clone. Inspired by Soviet and American Cold War rivalry and military espionage, as well as me wondering how stupid of a concept I can actually realize. In this video I'll give you a design overview and share my mindset while making this design, and while being painfully simple, really, there might be a trick or two that you'll find useful. Welcome to Technouveau. My name is Rasmus. I'm an art director and concept designer with 20 years of professional games development experience, and I'm on a mission to inspire and empower your creativity by discussing concept design, design thinking, and all the processes that surround that craft. If you want to support the channel, I have a Patreon with a few different levels of interest, and on technouveau.net you can find 3D models, merch, and things like that. So if you're interested in the craft of design, if you're interested in discussing design thinking for film, TV, computer games, things like that, maybe this is the place for you. So if we start by looking at a rough comparison between the experimental TIE design here and the original B-Wing over here, you'll see that there are a lot of similarities and a few differences. So if we start by looking at the similarities, obviously cockpit up top, main body, and then lower wing and gun and cannon here at the bottom. So completely the same sort of rough layout, right? Really similar. The funny thing about the B-Wing is that it has this interesting mix of shapes. So the main body is quite angular. It has this angular intake, right? And then upon these, it has these softer shapes. And of course, quite a soft cockpit canopy. And these bulbous shapes. It's almost like a little bit of a calamari type design in a sense. Actually, I'm not familiar enough with the design to know who built it. And as you know, if you've seen a few of my videos, I'm not super into the lore, but it certainly feels like it's a product of a model shop that has developed a set of skills to do things that are a little bit more advanced than an X-Wing and a TIE fighter and whatnot. Similar to Slave 1 in a sense as well, where we have these bulbous shapes, right? And it's a more dynamic, expressive design in its not in the layout but in its design. So for my crazy take over here, if we start with the big picture, the most important difference is that the original B-Wing has sort of a belly going for it, which is kind of interesting, and mine has almost the opposite shape in a sense. It has this squiggle. It's almost like an Asian sign writing or calligraphy, or maybe graffiti even. It has this sort of it has this sort of sweeping sensation here that gives it a quite aggressive look, I think. Add to that it doesn't really have as much of this softness as these curvatures from the original design. It's much more angular, mostly at least, you know, vents and you know, this particular shape as well. It's very sort of simplistic and aggressive. It's almost like as simple as an AK-47 in that it has this weaponized sensation to it. The only difference might be, you know, this particular little round shape here. We will look at that in 3D as well. That gives it a little bit of a redeeming character, I would say, compared to these really hardcore wings. So the thing to really say at this stage is it's really a layout exercise that I did to test how far can I really push this TIE fighter design language here, right, with the cockpit and of course the wings. And I was doing this to try and push it too far, and what happened was that I ended up actually liking it. So if we see the scale here, this is roughly to scale, so 16 or so meters tall the B-Wing and 8 meters tall the TIE fighter. And if we just do a rough comparison here, you can see that the cockpit up top actually matches in scale to the regular TIE fighter. And to be completely honest, I didn't look at scale when I designed this guy over here. So it's purely by chance. And so looking at the B-Wing and the TIE fighter, these are off the scales of the internet. I mean, off the measurements of the internet, and it's purely by chance, I swear. So those of you who are familiar with how I approach this, usually I will design this in a vacuum and just have fun with it, and then consider latching some sort of logic and order to it, or not in most cases. But this just goes to show that because I referenced the sort of the rough layout and composition of the original design, the B-wing, the scales ended up matching. So then another thing to mention is that the original B-wing is clearly exterior paneled. It has that full aircraft design to it, where my design is a little bit more jumbled and kitbashed and chaotic, and obviously that's on purpose to give it that simplistic weapon-like feel. Oh, and one last thing to mention at this stage is that the B-wing's wings and the guns are here in the body, and mine is up here. So that's quite a big differentiation. And then I don't really have this big intake either. I have a little bit of an intake in here. You'll see that in the 3D. But this is quite different. So the main body of the real design is quite large, and mine has these strange graffiti-like deconstructivist shapes to them. So they're quite different in how they feel, even though their design and their layout is super simple. Super similar, sorry. So enough of that. Let's take a look at the 3D model. So here you'll see the layout and the rendering as it comes in, and particularly you'll notice this particular disc here shape, and maybe you can recognize these two engines as well. It's fair to say, and in all honesty, obviously this is simply a kitbashed remix of this design, another design of mine, and an older heavy tie design. And I had this laying around, and I figured, one evening I was like, why not have a little fun with it and push the envelope here and reuse these parts and build something different. So as I mentioned in the beginning, this was just a ridiculous exercise in trying to push the shape language beyond its limits, and I ended up sort of falling in love with the result. So to talk about that, even this body here, this body here is sort of a cut to pieces part of that original heavy tie design. And the keen viewer will notice that that main body, maybe it's difficult in this bright lighting, but it's not even the same on both sides. You can see how rough the texturing is there. It's not even the same on both sides. And I'll get back to why that's, let's say, important or not later in the video. But one of these shapes here are very important for the main gun of the tie heavy design, and I decided to repurpose them here. Another thing you might notice is that I use this here lighting trick that you might have seen in a recent video I did, where I like to really push my sun to be really bright. And of course you can see here in this particular EV screenshot render that it has that screen space ambient occlusion as well that bounces up on the main body there. If we take a quick look at how it looks when it's rendered, you can see that this bounce here is really nice as well from this super bright wings here. Obviously that means that when you come over to the other side, it's completely blown out, right? It's way too much. But as I mentioned, and as I often talk about, I think having a design that is lit as powerfully as this, if you will, gives it that staccato, graffiti, odd, graphically torn shapes of these this outline here. I think it makes it much more interesting to look at, and I really like that. Really like to push the presentation of my designs with lighting in this sense as well. It's funny because I was looking at this and shared it online a few times before, and people commented that, hey, by the way, it doesn't really have the same layout as the original B-wing, so maybe we can just take a quick look at that. And also here I can show you how roughly I usually work. Again, considering myself more of a designer than a 3D modeler. So let's say we place that something like this. Move it across. Mirror. Yeah, I don't bother with the proper center because I like it rock and roll. So this is more akin to the real B-wing, I suppose. Let's just save that real quick. And here you'll see the little intake I have here. It's also really under modeled, right? It's not really, no time has been spent on modeling, really. It's really rough texturing, and the core concern at this stage is really layout and the flow of things. And I think refinement on this would then be to go in and decide a bunch of things in terms of details and how things connect and so on and so forth. So another note that I got has been the lack of a rotating cockpit. And that's certainly true. I suppose you could easily imagine, let's say maybe we look at it in here. You could imagine this part rotating separately from the bottom, almost as if there's a canister inside this one that would rotate with the pilot in it. Again, this could be, you know, if I was to spend some time on that, I would certainly include that because I think it would be fun. Because part of the idea, of course, is that this ship would have the properties of the original design copied, right? Referencing again the weapons race and Cold War and all that stuff. You would tend to copy the properties of the counterpart that you're trying to mimic and trying to let's say outmaneuver in the mechanical battlefield. So that's the wings fixed, that's the weapons fixed, that's the cockpit mentioned. So that's really it. It's really simple. But before we get to the last point I want to make, let's just check out some renders. So that's a really quick and dirty tie clone of a B-wing, and you know, just a quick run through of that design. The point I'm trying to make with this design is you can see how quick and dirty I approach this. You can see that I'm just remixing a design I already did with the intention of playing, and with the intention of playing freely to allow something new and unexpected to happen. And because I aimed at doing the most silly thing I could imagine, the power that's in that is really that I'm absolutely free because I have no constraints, I have no restraints, I have no fear, because I know it's ridiculous, right? It's a stupid idea. And because I set myself free in that sense, I discovered that, guess what? I landed something that I really like, and an idea that really inspired me to keep playing with the TIE Fighter design language, and I've done lots of designs. We'll look at them someday, but the lesson there for me is really when you let go of the fear, or let's say the fear of being taken seriously, or that's not a proper idea, or that's too silly. Is it though? Right? You see what I'm saying? The point is, let go and discover something new. If you want to see a video of how I do the lighting, as you saw in this video, and the stuff that I referred to, you can check out the video in the bottom. Until next time, see you.